You're now watching Because Geek.
Hi, I'm Sue the Fury. I'm the editor-in-chief and co-founder of Watchers on the Wall.
I'm Val from Because Geek, YouTube channel where I do mostly of what I do is detective work on Game of Thrones filming news.
I'm Luka, Nieto. I also write for Watchers on the Wall.
Yes, I think we're all pretty passionate about finding out news information, spoilers, production information about Game of Thrones, TV shows, which involves quite a bit of sleuthing and detective work. And it's probably going to be a running bit at this point that we're having a hard time pronouncing the word sleuthing. So yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, no, especially, well, I mean, for the two of us, we speak Spanish. It's our mother tongue. And so sleuthing is one of those words that is just...
It's a difficult word, yeah.
Yeah, extra difficult. But it's such a perfect word for what we do. And yeah, so just to get you all caught up, like, so they work on this Watchers on the Wall website, and they're the main source to go to for filming news. They write articles on it. They are super up to date on everything. So, and then what I do is just, they do their own sleuthing on the article, but like I also try to do my own sleuthing and not just, I don't want to just read your article in my video because it's just, that's not right. But I do try to put things together. So we're gonna go through. We have this panel kind of structured a little bit. So we will teach you guys basically what we do and how we do it. Starting with how we gather information, right? So that's a huge one because it takes a lot of time to gather all of the information that you need to put things together, first of all. So,
I think that there are two major concepts of how you can do it, and I think ultimately how you want to go about it is really going to be a matter of preference, but you can either start with a theory and then go about getting information to back it up, or you can start with the information and then kind of just go build from there. I always like to find the information and then kind of build the theory from there. That to me just seems a bit more sound, but I've seen people do it other ways. With Watchers, we have always been very much about searching. It sounds a bit dry, but the best thing to do is we always like to search the news. And I know that does not sound sexy, but the most reliable thing is setting up good old-fashioned Google alerts.
Yeah. hundreds of emails, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a very basic thing, but I think it's something people don't think about. I can't even count how many times people are like, wow, how did you find that incredibly hard to find, that obscure casting scoop? And I'm like, oh, just like good old-fashioned elbow grease. And I'm like, girl, I put in a casting Google alert for like season 7 and then quotes for like, CV and then like Game of Thrones, and it just popped up into my Google alert. Like, so if you game Google alerts, that's something that you can use. And I'm being sort of vague on the terms, but you can apply this towards any TV show. Obviously, Game of Thrones is over, but we have the prequel, or if you're into any TV show out there that you want to start your own website, this is something you can do. It's very applicable to anything, or about sports teams or books or anything. It's very, that's interesting. Anything, it's very doable. So to me, that's sort of like step one, is just Google is out there. It's kind of, it's Big Brother watching, so it is constantly searching. You can set it to deliver you emails every single day throughout the day. So you wake up in the morning, and that's what you check.
Yeah, we're also kind of lucky that since we're like a pretty main source of information, a lot of people come with with the things that they have actually uncovered, and they bring it to us directly. So yeah. That's actually, that only works if you already have an audience, of course, but that's also where we get some of our stuff.
Yeah, I think your best resource, in addition to a resource like Google that's already there, a great resource is always going to be human beings. I don't mean that to be flip, but community. Because there are some things that Google is going to miss, or not miss necessarily, but it'll take a little bit while to get indexed. But international searches can take a while. So once even a small community, but people will come around and just say, I think just to give an example, but when Game of Thrones started to shoot over in Croatia, a search would not pick up something in a Croatian language news, but we have Croatian readers, and they were very excited to bring us fresh information. So this was kind of a lesson in cultivating friendships and just basic human kindness. So it is so, so important to value the friendships that we make. And I think on the internet, people are not always necessarily polite, and I don't mean that to be condescending, but I think sometimes people will bring information and people will just take that information and just go use it. But I think I have tried to remember to value those people and just say thank you and give them credit, because they are also just an incredibly valuable source.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when I first started, I also realized that I wasn't giving enough credit to my sources of information, so I did start doing that more often. People did truly appreciate that, so that's good to know. But I'm learning things here. Like, I didn't know about these Google alert things. Man, you guys are on a whole other level. Damn. But yeah, I get my information from these guys, and also from sites like Reddit. There's and then Twitter. And you just learn to follow. There's a few fans that are always on the set, like visiting the sets and everything. So you learn to follow those accounts. They always have something new here and there.
Yeah,
so
mostly locals from Belfast, like.
Yeah, for the place when they're recording in a certain place. Yeah, there's the locals that always do it. Yeah.
A good recent example of the delay that you mentioned when it comes to international news is the fact that they're now shooting the prequel in Italy.
Yeah,
we actually just got the news that maybe they are shooting today instead of tomorrow, and the news, of course, was published first in the local news of the city where they're shooting, and then a few days later in Italian, Italian national news, and then it got to the international media. So it takes a while with that kind of stuff.
And even before it was indexed on a very international level, one of the more local people was starting to tweet it at us. So it's, again, it's the resources that sort of friendship is going to be most helpful. But I think you have a good point about things like Reddit and all that, because that's an example of the community pooling their efforts. And I think that's something that's really kind of changed and strengthened in the last, I would say, like 7, 8 years since Game of Thrones started. I mean, not that Reddit is brand new, but
yeah, no, they definitely they grew very, very much. Like, ever since season 5, that's when the hype really picked up for filming news, because we just wanted to know if Jon was coming back or not. That was the main thing. That was like the spark,
The famous hair watch.
Yeah, the hair watch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I wanted to ask you guys how you organize your information, because when I'm going through it, I need to have some sort of format to be able to easily search through everything that I've gathered. To put in. I personally use Evernote, so I just I list the date, the link to the article or the Reddit post or whatever it is, and then just a little summary of what I got, the information that I got from there, and then that's how I do it. How do you guys do it?
Oh, Luka is the master of this. I have to admit, I'm a hot mess. Luka here, he can tell you.
I'm very old school with that kind of stuff, and I prefer to write it as a story, like trying to uncover what the season looks like in order. Mm-hmm. So I get all the things that we reported on Watchers on the Wall, and I basically tell the story of the season as we know it, which is sometimes wrong or incomplete, but as we know it. And then I link to the source, which is usually us, or at least an indirect source. And it basically creates the story of the entire season.
Oh, yeah, it's cool because after I have all of it, then I also try to start putting it together through episode by episode what I think is going to happen, and eventually you structure the whole thing. One of the things that I do, let's talk about techniques on how to connect hints and clues. One thing that I like to do is I print out a calendar. Okay, so I just have these sheets. I like to do it, by hand, just because it's easier than on a computer. But I print out all these, for all the months that we know they're going to be filming, and then I write down on each day what's happening on that day. And then after you have everything written down, you can visually make connections, because there's things like, okay, so this one person that got cast is going to be filming on this time. this other person that got cast is going to be filming at the same time, and so you kind of know those two are probably on the same scene, and that can help you figure out that what kind of scene it could be. So, do you guys have anything like that?
Yeah, like I usually make note of the dates, especially when we get the casting calls, because that's the first time we get they often change, but that's the first time we get the days they're going to be expected to shoot if they're cast, and then we see which main stars are in Belfast or wherever it may be, and we try to make connections. That hasn't been the case, honestly, the last few seasons, I think, so much, or the last season, because there weren't any, except a few extras, a few soldiers, there weren't any actual new characters or, of note.
Yeah, no. I mean, the only one was, Harry Strickland, but I think...
Who had, an untimely death.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we knew Harry Strickland was filming at the same time as this sailor guy, and I'm like, okay, wow. He's going to be on a ship, so that doesn't really give us much, but... there was that. Well, there was one big one. Arya was supposed to be filming at the same time as this little girl that got cast. It was they cast twin girls to so they could film more scenes because children have what do you call it,
child labor laws.
Right.
Yeah. The child labor laws. Yeah, exactly. You can't film a child for too long. Okay, so so they got twin girls.
The trick is to get twins. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, exactly. So we knew that Arya would be filming with a child, and from that I just try to make some sort of theory based on just that, and that's part of the fun, right? And of course I was wrong about that, but.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, it's worth a shot. Yeah, exactly. That was the girl that she was saving from, while she was running through King's Landing, the mother and daughter that she was trying to save. Yeah,
trying.
Yeah, actually, speaking of the girl, that's kind of a good example of one of the sort of labor-intensive but still effective ways of finding casting, which is that Bronte Carmichael and the mother, those are some of the castings that were found just by searching casting agencies. So that's some of the sleuthing. I'm going to start to hate that word already. It's like no more. We're going to say detective work. There we go. Detective work. This is the detective game.
Yeah, you have the
Yeah,
hat.
no, I forgot to put it on. I was supposed to put it on. Okay, here we go.
Boom.
It doesn't get too uncomfortable.
So I love that. So the thing about British, English, Irish, and basically everything in the UK and Ireland is that they have these amazingly open management and representation agencies for actors. It does not really apply towards American actors agencies, unfortunately, because gosh, I would love that. But they have their resumes just entirely online for most of the actors, which is very helpful for confirming their roles.
Yeah, usually months before filming, you get the name of the character. Well, sometimes the name is fake or unimportant, but the name of the character, the season they're working on, and sometimes even the director, which tell
very
us
helpful.
Which episode they may appear in.
Yeah, and that was the case with the mother and the child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I was gonna. That's a good segue into getting into the directors, because that is huge. If you're trying to put together a timeline of when things were going to happen, if you're lucky enough to get the directors and their episode numbers, then you can definitely use that for so much. Like you can look at pictures from the set, and if you spot the director with the actors on that same set, then you know whatever the scene they're filming, you know in which episode it's going to happen. So then you can start to put together the timeline with that as well. Yeah, it's super helpful.
Yeah, this last time was especially helpful because we got it months earlier, officially. Normally we had to figure it out, but this time I think it was broken by Entertainment Weekly, maybe? I don't remember. But yeah, we got who was doing each episode months in advance, so we could figure it out pretty early.
Yeah, fairly. With the agencies thing, just to follow up on, you don't have to do this, but you can get a very comprehensive list of casting agencies. If that's something that interests you, you can just get it off of Pro IMDb if you happen to have a membership to that. That's just publicly available on that website. And you can even like search specifically by cities or countries, like London or Ireland, or you can look up a city like Dublin or something like that. So that way, if you're like thinking, all right, I'm gonna really narrow it down and hunt. And I mean, I can see like there are, just for example, one of our friends who was very big into Game of Thrones has started a website dedicated to the Witcher series coming out. And I know that he's been applying a lot of the techniques pretty successfully towards his Witcher website. And I mean, it's not that we necessarily taught him everything. He used to actually do a lot of these things and send us helpful information for, casting finds.
And he did recently, like, looking for Witcher Star, right? We got a thing about the prequel.
Yeah, yes, there was some information recently about the prequel, and we have always credited him, Gravemaster. He's a really smart guy. So, I mean, this can always be applied towards other TV shows, but Pro IMDb has this information, but you can still find the agencies publicly. It's just a little bit harder. You have to kind of Google British casting agencies, but it can be done. Yeah, but of course it's for a fee, is what I'm saying. So right. I do get the membership just because I'm a little bit lazy, and I find that it's personally I like to have a membership, but just putting it out there, it's sometimes you have to kind of decide if it's something you want to invest in. For me, having the website, it's worth it, but it's kind of you have to kind of decide for yourself if you want to. I personally think you can work around it if you're just doing it as a hobby and don't really want to kind of bother with that.
That makes sense. But
something you can do, this is just a Google trick also, is I don't know how sort of savvy you are to those tricks. If you just put just for an example, like Game of Thrones in quotes and then do site, like type the word site, : and then the specific website, like let's say unitedagents.co.uk, it's specifically going to pull up every single resume that has Game of Thrones in it. So that's how I'm able to pull up every single actor resume that has Game of Thrones. That's how I didn't have to look through every single actor. That will pull up every single actor in like less than a minute. So obviously if you're searching for like The Witcher or some other new TV show, boom, there you go. You're done. So that's how we were able to continuously do that all the time and find new casting scoops. Back before HBO wised up and said, stop putting your actors' resumes online. And that really just was a pain in the butt, because the problem is that once networks figure out that once they get wise, they constantly evolve, and we have to constantly evolve.
Remember when the casting calls had actual real names of characters?
They put on the season 5 casting call, let me tell you, and we actually slightly sanitized it because it was so spoilerific that I was like, we can't publish this. They put it on the casting call that Obara was gonna have this big fight with Jaime Lannister, in Dorne. We're like,
okay.
Kidding me? Like they used to put that on public casting calls. Right?
Well, before they had us, right? So we kind of
we ruined that.
Yeah, basically, because after that, I remember what was the casting call name of Harry Strickland? It was Commander or something like that.
Yeah.
My bad.
Sort of
we don't get names anymore.
Mercenary
Commander.
Yeah, times change.
That's the thing. It's a lot of security measures changed just because of the whole sleuthing community, how it blew up, and they really picked up on it and realized that we were getting too smart for their own good, and so they changed a lot of things.
It's also a matter of technology. They started to get into trouble with drones, which obviously before it wasn't a real possibility. It wasn't so cheap, so people couldn't do it. But now you can, buy a drone and
anyone can do it, right?
Yeah, I think that's something they didn't even think about. And I mean, I spoke personally with one of the guys who did drone footage, and he really didn't think there was anything. He didn't really think that there was anything in the footage. And at the time, I was like, there's probably nothing in it either. It just looked like it was. I knew it was Ironborn because it was guys on boats. I know Game of Thrones well enough that you're like, it's got to be the Ironborn, so you're like, no big deal. But then when we eventually started air, I was like, oh, okay, so this was Euron's sort of re-drowning. Then I realized it was actually way better footage than we placed it. But
right.
I think I was maybe a little naive. I just didn't sort of understand how significant it was that it was drone footage. and that we published like drone footage. Because to me, I'm just like, what's the big deal? It's a picture.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
it's a bit different. Like that was like in a public beach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's different if the drones that try to get into Titanic Studios in Belfast,
Right.
because that is actually private property. That's a different thing entirely.
yeah.
And they actually have signs that they are legally allowed to shoot them down.
Oh, geez, okay. I know they had like trained eagles that would take them down as well.
Yeah, well,
that was
they spoke about that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but they put the signs up everywhere. I know that because I had this conversation with the same guy. They started putting up signs everywhere that they're not allowed to. He wasn't allowed to use the drones anymore because he didn't just use it for Game of Thrones. He used them for everything. He was like a hobbyist with the drones. So he was just like a pretty harmless local guy. He was just doing it for fun. It was like, oh, cool. I ran into some filming. You know, he wasn't like a paparazzi or anything.
Yeah.
He was just a local and who just happened to be a fan and was trying to share something cool. And that's a lot of the stuff you find is just locals who stumble upon something cool and are really excited to share it.
There are also actual paparazzis who get into it, and they have professional gear, so they get really good photos. I remember for season 7, actually back where I'm from in the Basque Country in Spain, like we got a lot of photos because they were terrible at keeping it secret.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, an English paparazzi who had like a massive telescope.
Oh, Pap for You.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Pap for You was the guy on Twitter?
Yeah, that's
He'd like stalk them and it was
It
really
was,
hardcore.
Very good photos. Like that's how we got to know that that John would end up in Dragonstone. Well, actually no, because we had the entire season leaked. So that's how we that's how we confirmed that the leaks were real.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That was a terrible season for the community because there were people who didn't want to read any of the leaks,
Right.
and people who were totally into it. So
And that's Spain thing. And that was the first time they were filming in Spain. Or so like they smartened up after that. And for season 8, when they went back to Spain, it was even worse. It was really hard to get anything from that filming session. And David and Dan as well. Like they knew about the whole thing, so they brought a bunch of actors that weren't gonna film there, just to throw everyone off. Like they brought Kit to the Dragon Pit, and he wasn't doing any filming there. He was just hanging out.
The Furdik, the Night King guy,
Yeah, the Night King.
and the Faceless Men too.
Yeah, Jacking in the Wave were there as well.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I mean, Jacking in the Wave. I mean, like we knew, like there's no
yeah,
way.
Yeah, I didn't
that's
buy
what
it.
tipped us off, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, but also a lot of people thought that what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce it. The Robin Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lino Faccioli.
Yeah, Lino. That a lot of people thought that he was there just as another joke, but he was actually in the
he
scene.
was there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I did think he was coming. Because to me
I
that
thought
actually
so
made
too,
sense though, because he was a lord. So
I thought so too, but a lot of people thought that was part of the of the subterfuge.
all-time glow-up king.
Yeah, this is why I made this whole theory based on we'll see the veil again because Robin Aaron.
I remember, and you were convinced not to put you on the spot, but you were convinced by the trailers when we saw the. I mean, but you were right. Like we hadn't ever seen those kind of canyons.
Wait, what was the
in
theory?
north.
Yeah. So the canyon thing where the dragons were flying, like in the first, like the romantic scene, the dragonfly, with John and Danny. I could have sworn that was the way to the Bloody Gate.
Oh, okay. That actually makes kind of sense. That would have been probably better.
I mean, it was the photography that they used was from Iceland, the same as that they had used. So
That's
of course,
a good
like
point.
you saw that and you said, that's the veil because we haven't actually seen that in the
Exactly.
in the proper north.
So I mean, even if you know everything, you can still get something wrong.
Oh, for sure.
That's the fun about the speculation. Like, obviously, I love spoilers, but like, there is something. Sometimes you kind of, lose a bit of that joy of speculation when you know too much, and like that was kind of the downside of the season 7 leaks. Like, obviously, like I enjoy spoilers, but when the season 7 Away for the Lads was when he leaked like 100% of the season, it was like
it was a bullet point summary of the entire season.
Yeah, it was just too much, and people didn't. And the problem too is that people were aggressively spoiling people who didn't want to be spoiled.
Or having theories that were perfectly accurate.
Yeah, the theories. I know, and then it's difficult as well for us that do this, and since we don't like those leaked plots and we only like the what I call subtle leaks, if we do make a correct theory, then we can get accused of having read those leaked plots, and then so that kind of sucks, Nah, you can't get away from it.
We had to read them because obviously, in order to moderate our comments.
Oh yeah,
we
so
had
you
to
guys
differentiate.
had to
We had to because we had to differentiate between.
Right.
Yeah, we had to know.
Yeah. Okay. So I was able to stay away from them, but I get that, and I was like,
do you
I
have
don't
like a
want to.
YouTube moderator or something for the chat, or were people just nice?
No. I guess people were just. Sometimes I can tell when I get one someone theorizing, and they leave a comment with their theory, and I get too many people saying the same theory. I start putting it together that they probably read the leaked plot, and this completely random thing that all of these people are claiming as their theory. Okay, all right, come on, you read the leaked plot, I'm pretty sure.
What if Viserion becomes a zombie? Right? Yeah.
Oh my God, that was it. And but you know what happened with that? People started doing fan art with that leak.
Yeah, that's
they started drawing the freaking ice dragon, and so we all knew where it came from.
I was very frustrated with that because there are even people that I like. I mean, I really enjoy their fan art, but there would be like, oh, this is not a leak of any kind, but here's this incredibly elaborate, beautiful piece of fan art I drew. Oh, and it just happens to be of Viserion as an ice dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, can you retweet it to all of Watchers? No. But it's just fan art. Yes, it's gorgeous. No, I'm not going to retweet it.
You work with that guy
come on.
Who has wonderful fan art. I don't know.
I can't pronounce his name. But Ertach, amazing artist.
Yeah.
He loves drawing from spoilers.
Yeah.
And so I mean, he does add his own predictions to the art, so it's not just spoilers, but he does use a lot of the spoilers to draw. So I mean, I'm friends with him, so I didn't want to tell people don't look at his art because it's spoilery, but
it's wonderful art too.
Oh yeah, it's amazing, for sure. But things like that. And what was I gonna say? Okay, and then there's the spoiler etiquette thing, right? So you kind of learn. People get really angry when you just show something without a warning. So we have to get good at that as well. We have to give proper spoiler warnings everywhere, and. I mean,
some people are going to be angry anyway. That's my experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you are incredibly vague in the title of your article, people are going to get angry.
And they click on it. They click on it anyway.
Of course they do.
Yeah, we were just talked about this quite a lot in the not to spoil panel with Joanna Robinson, and how she does that for Vanity Fair, and how she will write when we agree, we both labor intensely over what to title the article, and is it vague enough but good enough that someone will want to click on it, because of course you want someone to read your article, or I'm sure watch your video, and then you'll put a nice cut or a GIF, so someone will there's a cut, people are warned, and then people will still click on it and then be like, I can't believe you said that, I can't believe you spoiled that. You're like,
what else do you want to see?
Yeah, at what point does personal responsibility come into it?
It's also the other way around. Some people get angry that we didn't allow they didn't see the difference between the complete season 7 leaks and just getting information from filming and casting news.
Right.
Yeah.
So they got angry, especially people from Reddit got angry that we didn't allow any of the leaks conversation.
Right.
That was a terrible year.
It was a bad year. I mean, we did at Watchers, we did eventually set up what we called a quarantine forum. We were just on our forum said, hey, cool. That was our sort of coping mechanism was just go over here and discuss it in this forum. It's a free for all, but. That was our compromise, because we do have spoiler coding to cover things, but people weren't using it. And I think at some point you got to be practical and accept that people aren't going to do it. They're just not going to do it all the time. And we have so many people who don't want spoilers or haven't read the books or haven't done this and that. And you just have to do what is best for as many people as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about what you were saying of how to make a good title that gets people to click on it without talking too much about the spoiler. I tried with the Arya video. I believe I had typed Arya or Macy films with a child, and that was too much for some people. It's oh no, spoilers. I'm like, what? It could mean anything. and in the end, it didn't mean anything. I don't know. I was saying, it's still what did they think? Did they think that Arya would have a kid, or that it was maybe Jon and Dany's kid? I don't know, but. Yeah, so things like that, they happen all the time. But you got to just deal with it. It's not that many people that complain, right? Most people are okay.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Coming back to something you said earlier about that sometimes we overestimate or underestimate the spoilers that we got. I remember that we had like the very vague description of a scene that turned out to be when John reveals.
Oh.
Yeah. When John reveals.
Okay. Oh wait. Say what the. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. There was a spoiler, like a fragment someone sent us. It was.
From a production schedule, right?
Yeah. It was like a part of like a call sheet kind of, and we got like just like one page, and it was like they sort of give like a breakdown, and it's very very vague, and because it's so secure now, and it said something like
they use
two people.
Fake names.
They use fake names. They took very fake names, and you can't even decode them. I mean, it might as well be like Mo, Larry, and Curly. Like, it's totally vague. And it said, like, two people have a conversation in a crypt.
And then a bell rings or something. No, a bell, no.
A horn, yeah.
Oh, and then a horn.
Yeah.
And then a horn
that turned out
blows.
to be John telling Daenerys about his heritage, and then the White Walkers arriving. So
we didn't even publish that because they were like, "What the hell's that?"
Yeah.
like this is crap. That's useless.
That didn't seem to mean anything. Yeah. And then on the other hand, like we had during the filming of the Long Night, like honestly, like maybe that was my fault. I interpreted it as Winterfell falling because the entire set actually appeared to be not in real flames, but like
it was up in flames from the pictures.
Flames,
it was fully in flames.
Yeah, and that happened. But I think I had assumed that if it was going to be that bad, that they were going to retreat. That was a popular theory, right? That they were going to retreat south. But that didn't turn out to be the case.
Yeah, no, I ran with that. I was like, it looks good. Yeah, like what you said. Yeah. I was convinced that they were going to burn the whole Winterfell down, and it was. After looking at it, I'm thinking that it was a combination of the quality of the video with the fact that the smoke combined with the lights, with the quality of the video, it looks like fire.
There was overexposure,
overexposure. So it was just the smoke, I think. And I think we got a shot of it in the documentary where you can actually see with super good quality what it actually was like. And it was mostly smoke. And it still looked like a big fire.
Yeah, the orange bits came from just the fire on the ground that we saw in the episode.
Yeah. And so Winterfell didn't burn down, which sucks because there were so many cool theories.
Yeah,
I would have loved that.
I think a lot of most people's theories, including yours, including mine, and everyone's, like hinge on the idea that they were going to, lose their first battle and then have to go south and have like a 3-party battle of some kind with Cersei, the Night King, and the good guys.
Yeah. That would have made sense, for sure.
Yeah, there were a lot of like really, really cool theories. I think that's why some people were like disappointed, just because we had
the Long Night was
so much speculation, and I don't know. Like, I mean, I worry sometimes too. That's like, when we do this stuff, maybe we contribute to the disappointment.
I kind of feel like.
I mean, that's
because we were practically creating our own fan fiction before it's out, based on the crumbs that we have.
Yeah.
Right.
And that can create disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the stuff we have to kind of think about sometimes, is the possible negative consequences of what we do. There's not, it's not all yeahs, and we have to sort of own what we do, that it's not all greatness, and that, sometimes we might even cause problems for production.
Yeah.
Like they had to totally change their process of like no more paper, like that's totally went to like tablets, and apparently like their script like disappears when they leave because they've lost complete scripts
like
before,
Snapchat,
and
right? Like
we found them.
They read it and then it disappears, the file, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they did. I mean, they've been pretty careless with scripts before. Like just to give you a couple fun examples, when they were filming in season 4, when they were filming the trial, they were on some location in Northern Ireland. They lost a chunk of the script. We'll just say his name rhymes with Inklage, lost a chunk of his script, and it managed to find its way to us, and we didn't really do anything with much of it because it was pretty much straight from the book. So, and we knew they would film that anyway, so it wasn't really a big deal. But it was just like, hey, they're doing the trial. So, they were very careless with the scripts in the early days. And when we're doing the Red Wedding, like there were like 3 pages of call sheets that one of the ADs managed to, I think it was in a bar or something, managed to lose that. And we did get a hold of those. And we didn't publish the pages, but we did use a lot of the information from the pages because we weren't going to like publish the pages because his name's across from it. And I'm sure HBO would just come right for us, but we could glean a lot of information from it, like the fact, there was some casting information from it at the time. We knew that Tom Brooke had been cast, but we could not confirm what role. And from that casting sheet, that was how I was able to confirm that he was Lothar. But I was just said, it was some kind of source. I think I was vague on what the source was. Right. That was the source. Yeah. So stuff like that. Sometimes you just get dumb lucky. Yeah. Dumb luck. You know what I mean? And that's why sometimes you have to be like unnamed source, because ultimately the thing you need to always do is protect your source, even if it causes you inconvenience with HBO, because they will try to threaten you, networks, but they usually can't do jack to you. And that is the bottom line. You just have to be very careful about what you do. When you start posting things like scripts, you are walking a fine line because that is their property. And that's why if you look at places like Watchers or when we used to write for WIC, and, when you look at a lot of the videos people do, you'll see there's they're careful about what they put out there. Because if you don't own that thing, they can make you take it down. But we don't usually post that. We just post information.
Yeah, and sometimes there's stuff that we get that we don't post either because it's, it will be problematic or it's just not that interesting. But we can use that to ascertain when some, the season 7 leak turned out to be real. But there are always people trying to make up stuff and pretending that it's a leak. And then we can use a few things that we know in order to see if that's actually true. Because most of the fake leakers just use what's already been reported from filming and casting in order to basically create a story. Yeah,
it makes sense. It's good to have those morals, in the right place and just, not be a jerk and post everything. I know you mentioned AD, and I wanted to get into how much it helps to know, to know how production works, to know all of the little aspects of production. I know you're really good with this, Luka, because you always use that, what it means for a camera to be on top, or a light to be on top, or what it means for them to have these little.
People don't seem to understand what green screens are for.
Yeah, those two. Yeah, but is it the one that I learned about that was the coolest? I think is a silver ball that they bring on set. And that's meant for the dragons, I believe. There'll be dragons in that scene because they're trying to get the.
Yeah, they're trying to get the ambient lighting in order to then add that into the textures of the dragon. Yeah. So they're basically getting raw data information, just so that then the dragon looks like it's actually there. So when you see one of those things, you know that they're going to add a CG creature into the scene.
Yeah, exactly. So you can get a lot of extra information just from that knowledge alone, and the fact. So when there's, if you know the assistant director, the AD is an assistant director, or the DP, which is the director of photography. If you know these guys' faces and you know which directors they work with, then you can. If you just see a picture of them and not the director, you know which director was supposed to be there as well. Things like that, the other thing that you got was I think when they were building the sets for King's Landing, they were actually building the roofs, and then you knew that they were going to film above the city because otherwise they wouldn't need to build the roofs if they're just filming through the city, right?
For sure, yeah.
So that was cool.
And we ended up getting a lot of aerial photography, yeah. Which
means dragons.
Yeah, that matched with what what we had already reported on, that there would be dragon fire on that set. Yeah. Which is, of course, why they didn't shoot in Dubrovnik and just recreated the entire city in Belfast. Yeah, because they had to actually burn it all down.
And you can't burn down Dubrovnik.
Nope.
It's very old.
Oh, by the way, was that from one of your sources that said that the King's Landing would burn with dragonfire?
Yeah.
So what kind of? I mean, I'm not saying who it is, but is it someone that works with the production team?
I'm sorry, I said so bad I can't remember right now.
I do remember that we didn't know, we weren't hiding which dragon it was or anything, because back then we didn't know if maybe the Night King would arrive south. So we thought that maybe it was the white dragon, some Viserion burning the city. We don't actually know.
Yeah, sometimes I think a lot of times when people are analyzing it, they think that people are sort of like handing you a page of the script and you just have all the details.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when you get information, it's because someone was talking to their friend who works on the show and they're sitting in a bar and they're like, yeah, my buddy is just kind of bragging at me like, oh yeah, Danny's going to get killed this year. And, blah, blah, blah. And that's why you only know a piece of information. So, and like, I mean, you try to verify it, but that's why you only get like a piece of the pie. So, yeah, that's why it's vague. When people try to get more information, it's like doing the best we can. But
I think it's the interesting stuff that we don't actually do that much. We mostly provide the information. We try to, speculate a bit, but that's like secondary for us. But you do a lot of, actually like picking all of these little bits of information, crumbs of information, and actually building a story out of it. Mm-hmm. Which I think that's actually the fun part, right?
Well, which takes way longer because
sure.
That's why the videos just take so long. There's so much to do, so many articles to go through, so many connections to try and make and find, and then to make it sound like, to keep the audience engaged as well throughout the video is a strategy too. So, you have to get good at that as well.
I think it's kind of interesting. It's like sort of two ways of going about it. It actually kind of reminds me, like, it's funny, the hat made me think of it. It kind of reminds me of like in like detective stories when like the police will like gather all the information and then Sherlock Holmes will like build the narrative. So it's kind of like we're the policemen like just gathering all the information and you're like Sherlock Holmes, like just like doing all the like deducing and like
your police caps.
There you go. I'm like Lestrade and you call me a dumbass. That's all right. I'll be like the sexy Rupert Graves version. So
perfect.
Was
there we go.
Like prediction that you were particularly proud of that you got right, or
I think
that you saw it in the episode and you were like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of them. I didn't predict it like 100%, but I was pretty close with it, and that was the Sam and John in the crypt. Because we knew that there was going to be two scenes in the crypt. We knew about two scenes in the crypt. So the one with the horn being blown, and then the one where two main characters were going to discuss Ned's death. Yeah. And so I was thinking, okay, so if it's Ned's death, then it's got to be either, it has to be a Stark. And a scene in the crypts, usually, so I started to look through all of the crypt scenes, and I had to put together, it took a lot of research because I had to look through every episode from this one director. I knew this director was going to direct this episode, so I had to look through all of his episodes and make sure that I could find a pattern of what kind of episode he usually directs. And I was able to figure out that he usually does a lot of the R+L=J scenes. And so I was thinking, okay, so if this director does R+L=J scenes, or this writer, sorry, it was the writer. Yeah, it was Dave Hill. The writer for that episode does that.
He also did the 504, Sons of the Happy, which was one of the big moments of, with Sansa and Littlefinger in the crypt, right?
Yes, he did that one, exactly. He did that one. He did so many others, and so I was, okay, so if this is an R+L=J scene, then it only makes sense for one of the characters to be John, and the other character to be the one who's going to reveal this R+L=J scene, because there's nothing left in this R+L=J story arc except to reveal it to John, at that point after season 7. So the only two characters that could reveal it to John were Sam or Bran. And so, this wasn't an assumption, but I figured, Bran is in a wheelchair. There's, it's probably very difficult for him to go down there. So I just eliminated him because of that, and I said, okay, it'll be Sam. It'll probably be Sam and John talking about Ned's death in the crypts, and then Sam goes and reveals it to him. And then I wanted to have, because I knew they were doing a lot of parallels with past episodes, and I was thinking, okay, how cool would it be if they made this parallel with when Ned and Robert had their scene in the crypts, and Ned knelt for Robert, who was his king. How cool would it be if Sam knelt for John? And of course, Sam didn't kneel for John after he revealed the king's thing, but he did fall and trip, and he was on his knee. So
you mark that as a win, right?
Yeah, that's a win.
That's close enough. Yeah. Close enough for government work. That's good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll count that as a win for sure. That's actually really good work, I would say. And I think it's not an accident.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun just watching your videos and seeing all the Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
That was one of my proudest ones. I'm like, okay, I put so much stuff together for this one thing, and yes, it worked for the most part. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Let's forget about the veil, right?
Let's forget about the veil, exactly. I wanted to say, like, what lessons have you guys learned from past seasons? Because we usually get better every year. You know, we learn a lot from what we do, and the following year we try to do better. So, do you have any stories?
I mean, I think just not make assumptions. Like when we first started out doing this, I mean, I totally had no idea what I was doing. We used to be able to get a lot of information just based off of Twitter follows and things like that. But pretty soon, I think HBO tipped them off, do not follow each other on Twitter and things like that until you are officially confirmed to be on the show. But at first, we were much more reckless and would post about it like, hey, so-and-so is following so-and-so. Maybe they're going to be on the show. But that we very quickly had like egg on our face, and it was kind of embarrassing to have someone tweet and be like, "Oh, I'm not going to be on that show." You know, it was. So that was something way back. It was not long after I started writing for Wick, so that was after season 2, before season 3. So that was something. So I guess the lesson there was not to make assumptions that quickly. Learning to double check information and get confirmation, some kind of confirmation, just because. I guess, you know, you can't always get 100% confirmation, but get something. Get something so you feel like at least 75 to 85, percent sure, so you feel a little bit confident.
Yeah. What I would say, just for the average fan, probably, is very simple. Is just don't believe the leaks. Unless you start seeing like people like us worried about managing the leaks. Yeah, just don't believe them, because every year there are a lot and they're mostly fake. Even this year there was a lot of bullshit about Tyrion and
Oh God, I saw Gendry being announced as dead in the Long Night so many times in Tormund, and yet we had pictures of him in that beautiful leather slashed. Like I was like.
Yeah, which was obviously from later in the season in Seville, in the Dragon Pit.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much that you can learn, because a lot of this, the leaks will be very 50-50. Like sometimes you'll get a legitimate and sometimes you'll get a non-legitimate one. I think there was this one guy, and maybe it was just my fault, but I thought it was the same guy who sneaked onto the set, and he actually took pictures of the body props that were there for the episode 3 battle scene against the Night King. And I thought it was the same guy who said that they had also filmed Melisandre bringing the dead back and raising the dead back to fight against the Night King. And I was convinced that was going to happen. And also that Jaime would die in Brienne's arms. There were these rumors that were going around that were, like, people were taking them as fact. And that's the thing as well, like, the community learns as a whole. Like, as a community, we put all of our minds together to try and figure out what is fake and what is not. So a lot of the times we're right. So it's better to follow the community as well, to see like, okay, if the community are saying that this person is fake, then we should probably believe that they're fake. Yeah. So things like that as well.
Just don't blindly believe it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the desire to believe can be really strong sometimes, but if there's no reason to believe it except for you're wanting to believe it, big grain of salt.
Do you have like room for 1 or 2 questions or something?
Oh yeah, do you guys have any questions? We have like 5 minutes left. Oh yeah, sure.
So my question is for Val. So I remember when there were more trailers coming out, like in season 6 and 7, you would say, oh, well, this is the Inn at the Crossroads door. And like, so my question is, do you have a photographic memory?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, because I always try to keep like this whole, my dream was to have a complete database where I would go through every episode, every scene, and just write down what was in every scene. Like, this scene had armor, this scene had weapons, this scene had this character in it, this scene had this location in it. And then I could just easily search through the whole thing and just type, like, when I was like, killing myself trying to find whose dagger this one dagger was, from like, the Unsullied daggers that I had never paid attention to before, but it was in the trailer, so I had to figure out whose dagger it was and whose hand it was. That dagger, if I had just had this database where I could just type in daggers and it would take me to every single scene of Game of Thrones that had daggers in it, that would be the dream. But yeah, it's just a matter of, you kind of have to get lucky sometimes. You try to go through as many scenes as possible that you remember may have had a dagger like this. and just try to figure it out this way. But yeah, if you don't have that database, then you have to rely on your memory a lot as well. Yeah, for sure.
I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, if they're quick, is there a quick question? Yeah, this one.
I didn't know if you was looking.
Yeah, sorry.
Real quick, it's for any of you. Have you ever been researching a specific theory that you had? You're digging through and you're coming up with all this, and then all of a sudden pops up that has nothing to do with what you were looking for, but takes you in completely another direction.
Yeah.
You start working on that theory.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, so having a
Good
whole
question.
full-on theory thought out, and then you get one piece of information that kind of just kills everything. yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Often.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, often, but I think that you have to listen to it. I'm trying to think of a specific
Accept it.
example.
Not try to twist the information you get to your pet theory.
Yeah, you have to. I think you do have the instinct to want to ignore it, but you just have to give in to truth sometimes. Yeah, always listen to the truth. Like if the casting tells you, like if you're following a casting and you're like, you know what, it seems like this person is probably filming something else at that time. They are. Just go, just keep on something else. Just listen to it.
It's
or,
part of the job to just deal with the disappointment, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
All right, so yeah, so I'll go talk to you. We can talk to you after the panel outside if you want to ask a question. Yeah, but yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining us here, and
Thank you, everyone.
hope you enjoy the rest of the con. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming.